Welcome, everybody. It is now 2:45, and we thank you so much for being present with us. Today, we have our study session and want to be sure that we got everybody present. Looks like we've got such a packed house here with all of the enthusiasm. So can we have a roll call, please?
The record will reflect all council members are present, with the exception of Councilmember Truby.
Thank you. What is the topic of today's study session?
We have two topics, Mayor, and I'd like to start, if we could, with the study session regarding the Desert Healthcare District's proposed hospital lease agreement, the non-compete provision, which we've had several questions about. So we do have a short presentation for council, and then ask any questions that you might like. I've also included and Anthony has put on the dais a letter I received from the CEO of the Desert Healthcare District about 40 minutes ago. Regarding the provision, the non-compete provision. Have not really had a chance to review it in detail. I'm not sure that it accomplishes everything that is of concern out there, but I at least wanted to share that with you.
Thank you. I'd like to have a few moments for my peers and I to review this since it just came in at the very last minute before the presentation. Thank you.
Okay. Everything is the same, and I've not had an opportunity to have legal review this, and it does appear that there's at least one provision that might be in conflict with what's been stricken out. So again, this not a lot of context, but I did let him know that I would share this with council ahead of the workshop. I don't think it has a huge bearing on the concerns that have been articulated over the non-compete provision. So depending on council's direction, we'll go ahead and listen to the workshop and their study session and then consider the resolution tonight. But I think it's still moving in the direction that, at least the feedback I received, you'd like to see it move, but I'm not sure it accomplishes everything yet.
Thank you. Having had a brief moment to be able to review the document, let's continue, please.
Well, Madam Mayor, I guess I'm up. So Madam Mayor and Council, it is so good to be with all of you. It's good to be back here in the Palm Desert City Hall chambers, maybe in a little different capacity.
And I trouble you to bring the mic a little bit closer.
Oh, sure.
So our friends watching online can hear.
Oh, great.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
I'm Chad Mays, and I'm a consultant for Eisenhower. I'm here today on behalf of Eisenhower Health, Eisenhower Medical Center. So I've got a handful of slides. As I was thinking about today, and by the way, thank you so much for being willing to hear this. For the city of Palm Desert, the Desert Healthcare District, being another local agency with the history and the background and the taxpayer assets and the impact that it will have on the city of on the residents in the city of Palm Desert, it's legitimate that the city of Palm Desert engage and let their voice heard. It is not my intent today to be able to try to sway you in any one direction. I spent some time in local government, spent 8 years as a city council member, regional government, county board of supervisors, and also up in Sacramento as well. This is a decision that you have to make on behalf of the people who elected you. But wanted to be able to sort of run through some background on the Desert Healthcare District. Also talk a little bit about the impact maybe of the original boundaries of the Desert Healthcare District, and of course the expansion of the Desert Healthcare District, and then also talk about the negotiations that are forthcoming between the Desert Healthcare District and Tenet Hospital, Tenet Systems, Tenet Health, as they're looking right now. In fact, today is a study session they're having later on this evening, another one next week, and they're trying to make a decision very, very quickly. So we'll run through this a little bit if that's okay, Madam Mayor.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Please do.
So just to start off, a little bit of background. The Desert Healthcare District. The Desert Healthcare District was created in the late 1940s for the purpose of providing hospital services to the residents the district. Of course, it was a different time then. There wasn't as many people that were here as there is today, and there was a huge need to be able to have an acute care inpatient hospital. And so the residents banded together in 1948 to create the healthcare district, and then ended up building and operating Desert Hospital, which we now know as Desert Regional Medical Center. Today, their annual revenue is approximately $13 million, with $9 million of that funded through property tax dollars. I'm going to show you a map here in a little bit of how that works. $87 million in total. They have $87 million in total assets as of May 31, 2024, and $71 million of that in cash and investments. Since 1999, more than $70 million has been allocated through a best practices grant administration department, district revenues from property tax, a medical building asset, and an investment portfolio support those efforts. And so dollars that come into the district today, the district then allocates that mostly in grant funds to various nonprofits throughout the valley. Just a quick thing, for those of us that are here, we know that back in 2018, there was a measure, it was Measure BB, that was on the ballot. And the voters in the Coachella Valley voted to expand the Desert Healthcare District from its original map, its original lines, to a much larger map. Let me show you that as well. So if you see there, the blue line or the red lines is the original Desert Healthcare District. It included the cities of Palm Springs, Cathedral City, Rancho Mirage, and not all of Palm Desert. In fact, it ended at Cook Street. And in 2018, it was expanded out to include virtually the entire Coachella Valley. Why that's important, I wanted to bring that up, is that the property tax, Desert Healthcare District is a pre-Prop 13 agency. And the folks that lived in that original district voted to tax themselves, originally 1%, and ended up increasing a little bit. From what I can tell, it's about 2%. But because of that, folks from Palm Springs to Palm Desert pay a portion of their property tax that goes towards the Desert Healthcare District. Everywhere beyond the red lines, so in Indian Wells, it's a very, very small amount, but most of Indian Wells, La Quinta, Bermuda Dunes, Indio, Coachella, all of that area, they don't pay anything in property taxes. And a portion of Palm Desert folks do not pay any amount going into the Desert Healthcare District. But that is an important part in this whole conversation. The next slide, Desert Regional Medical Center is a 385-bed acute care hospital. We know this. We all know about Desert Regional and where it's located at. We've all had family and friends that have gotten great service at that hospital. In 1997, the Desert Healthcare District Board voted to lease the hospital to Tenant Systems for 30 years, and they did it with a prepaid lease. They actually wrote an upfront check that really provided the funds for the entire time, and it's the investment earnings on that have been going to the Desert Healthcare District that has been used for some of their grants. But that 30 years is coming up. So those of you that are thinking about 1997 is almost 30 years ago, and so that's coming up. And like I started off with, there's a study session this afternoon, another study session next week. And then I think they plan on July 23rd. They hope to be able to get the negotiations done, the language done, to be able to get this on the ballot for November. So
Quick question, do we know the amount that was given that prepaid 30-year?
If I remember correctly, it was 90 million, 95 million. The numbers are going to be off, but it was something like that was the prepaid amount.
Just the estimate,
yeah.
so we can get a visualization of the progress.
So this, they did have, the Desert Healthcare District Board had a meeting back in May, at the end of May, that there was a motion that was, that they had that said, we're going to move forward with lease negotiations with them. There'd been some talk before about whether they were going to, as a public agency, take back the hospital, whether they were going to contract out with somebody else. But at their May meeting, they made a decision to move forward. Now, this is the presentation that was given. This is not these are not my numbers. These are the numbers that were presented back at the May meeting. And so I just really want to go through one of these things. You'll see it says total payments to the district will be approximately $650 million over the course of the next 30 years, which is an incredible amount of money. In fact, if you think of the $650 million that we paid over the next 30 years and the property tax amount that will come in over that same period of time from that original district, it's about $350 million, was a good estimate. This is $1 billion. If you think about $1 billion in revenue that's going to come in over the next 30 years. Some other language that they had put in there, making it clear that the goal was to be able to have a new lease that will contain language to ensure that the district and tenant, a for-profit entity, will continue to work as partners to expand care throughout the district's entire geography. Second point is the new lease will contain a provision whereby tenant or Desert Care Network commits to pursue an expansion of the emergency department admitting area at JFK Memorial Hospital. And then the last bullet, the new lease would contain a non-compete clause similar to what exists in the current lease with a territory matching the district's current boundaries. And I didn't bring a slide to go through and talk about what the current lease is, but basically the current lease says that there can't be any funds given, Desert Healthcare District funds given to any other acute care hospital. There's only one other acute care hospital in the Coachella Valley, and that is Eisenhower. And I just want to make this point that Eisenhower would prefer to not have to come to the council. We would prefer if there were multiple hospitals, but the truth is we're the only one, and it does affect us. But going to the non-compete clause, it isn't just about us. It's not just about Eisenhower. So the language that you have before you is in a draft that we just saw yesterday, and it was up on their website. And my understanding is that today there has been an update to some of the language. And I don't know if Mr. City Manager, if you wanted to address that.
Yeah, thank you, Chad. The information that I shared with council was emailed to me about 45 minutes ago. So it was recently updated to include a provision in there that the intent is not to restrict financial assistance to the other healthcare facilities providers within the district boundaries. I'm not sure the language is consistent with that, but that's at least what was shared with us a few minutes ago.
Okay. And so just want to run through this a little bit. By the way, our legal counsel had gone through quickly yesterday to be able to provide these bullet points. And I'm just going to read them verbatim and you can understand them. So it says the restrictive covenant states that neither the Desert Healthcare District nor its foundation will directly or indirectly provide financial assistance to any hospital or other healthcare facility, provider, or business within the geographical boundaries of the district without tenant's prior written consent. By the way, which tenant may withhold in its sole and absolute discretion. And we're going to get to this in a little bit, but just want to stop with this. So imagine a scenario in which a public entity owned by the public would contract out with a for-profit corporation based out of Texas and would say, we're going to collect this money for an asset that is owned by the public. And yet after we've paid you that amount, we have to get your permission to be able to spend those tax dollars. The next bullet point, the restriction is even broader than the current lease. This is the language that we were just talking about. Looks like they've already had some shift there. Interestingly, in addition to the core restrictive covenant language, the clause includes a direct statement that the Desert Healthcare District and its foundation cannot provide financial support to another acute care hospital within the district's boundaries. Today, by the way, that's Eisenhower. What about 10 years from now? What about 20 years from now? What about 25 years from now? Now we have a district that doesn't just go from Palm Springs to Cook Street. We have a public agency that now goes from Palm Springs all the way down to the East Valley. And
the Imperial County, it's even beyond that.
And we do know that the East Valley has incredible needs, incredible healthcare needs. And this lease, the language that's in this would preclude any acute care hospital from receiving any funds from that public agency. And then just finally, the policy problem, which is, I'll repeat myself here, is allowing an out-of-state for-profit company to control and restrict the distribution of our local taxpayer funds is a direct violation of fundamental public policy principle. I think anybody that looks at that would suggest that. This arrangement undermines the Desert Healthcare District's mission and its purpose for existence, to serve the healthcare needs of our community without external corporate interference. It is crucial to safeguard our local resources and ensure that decisions about their use are made by those who genuinely prioritize and understand the needs of our community. So we must, this is me, I'm added this a little bit, we must reject any agreement that compromises our autonomy and the well-being of our residents. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Do we have any questions or anything to bring up on the topic? Yes, please.
So what are the next steps then, assuming it's crucial that this doesn't move forward with that?
Well, council member, I mean, this is why you're hearing this today. And I think it's been brought before because City of Rancho Mirage, by the way, has taken this up. And they believe that it's important for the folks that live in Rancho Mirage to be able to defend the taxpayer dollars that are there. Question is this something the city of Palm Desert wants to do as well? I do think it is appropriate, even though we want to have respect for another duly elected local agency. There are times that will arise in which it's important that the voice is heard. And the only body, the only organization, the only public entity that has the ability to speak for the citizens of the city of Palm Desert are you guys. And so it is appropriate for you guys to be able to engage, let your voices heard, whether that's in the form of a resolution, whether that would be in the form of a letter, that would be up for you to decide.
There is a resolution on your agenda later this evening, if you agree with this policy stance, objecting to the non-compete clause, which if passed, we will share with the Desert Healthcare District.
Yes, please.
So I've been multitasking and looking at this revised language. I see a whole lot of doublespeak, which I will feature during the action agenda. My question is this. You've recognized that one agency doesn't always opine to another agency, as we potentially do that in this case. It could be helpful to understand as fully as possible why they're willing to even think about this. Can you help us understand that?
I can't. I wish I could. And I have myself sort of racked my brain as to the reason why. I've been in government for a long time. And so, my spidey senses start to go too. But I don't want to go down that road to believe that there's, anything that's been wrong. This is a lot of money, by the way. I mean, it's a significant amount. And there is before them a proposal that would provide for a healthcare system to operate at Desert Regional for the next 30 years. There's a bunch of other complications. You could talk about seismic retrofitting and all of that sort of thing that could also play into that. But I'm the wrong person to be able to answer that question. You'd have to have somebody from the Desert Healthcare District to be able to speak to that.
That's a good point that has been brought up in terms of why are they on the hook? Why would this be a consideration? I attended one of the public hearings that was held at UCR, and that was one of the largest concerns, that as the hospital stands now, well, as the entity stands, they don't have the money to do the retrofit, and they know that they already have substantial challenges, and they're kind of at the mercy because they don't have the capacity to even borrow the amount it would take to do the retrofit. I don't remember the amount, but it is substantial. And I think this is though the only proposed solution that they have available. I agree that there is a lot of doublespeak that we can address later, but in terms of that, from what I saw at that public hearing, that was one of the points of consideration was the seismic retrofit. Any questions or comments? Okay. I would like to highlight, as you mentioned, the broad geographic area. Yesterday, I was at the library and spoke to a student that happened to be a pre-dental student. And I ended up writing a letter of recommendation for him, and we looked up the stats of the dire need for more physicians. We are so medically underserved. We have approximately 636 doctors for every 100,000 people that live here. That is not sufficient access. The fact that this would limit an organization or a nonprofit's ability to provide services is very alarming. This is substantially alarming, especially, as you said, a for-profit entity. That student was mentioning coming back and serving his local community and offering services as a sliding scale where it could be supplemented with that. In addition, as you mentioned, they are a for-profit entity in Texas. And as I have looked into this myself, I'm very, very interested in how this will play out. They don't have the best reputation of caring for the entities that they take on. So this is a substantial set of thoughts that I've got bouncing back and forth. But thank you for providing the map so that those watching at home or on YouTube are able to have the context.
I'll just make the quick comment that this isn't an Eisenhower issue. This isn't a tenant issue. This is the taxpayers and Desert Healthcare issue. And why would Desert Healthcare ever choose? And they're supposed to be working for the people who have voted to give them that money. Why would they ever choose to tie their hands for 30 years in conflict with the stated mission of Desert Healthcare? And that, I think, in my mind, is the question that has to be answered. And I don't think anybody has an adequate answer. This was started for access to high quality healthcare to serve all the people. And now they're saying we've decided something else. And they don't have that right because the people voted on Desert Healthcare. So those are my comments and my thoughts on that. And I know we'll have a robust discussion, I'm sure, during the council meeting. Thank you.
If there are no further comments or questions, Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. Our next study session item, our Assistant City Manager is going to provide council an overview of the negotiations that have been ongoing for the last couple of years with Imperial Irrigation District in order to bring energy supply to about 20 of our property owners in the northern part of Palm Desert. I believe that we've been able to finally structure an interesting financial partnership. And so we'd like to share that with council now that we've had an opportunity to meet with the property owners. So Chris, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Todd. So we first encountered this when we were in the process of obtaining the will serve letter from IID for the city's 4th fire station. And what we understood from that standpoint is that absent any new substation infrastructure and the funding to go with it, IID will not provide any new will serve letters for any private development in this area. So IID does have a limited service territory in Palm Desert. The vast majority of the city is covered by SCE. And really what we're talking about today is this area in particular. I have a couple of maps that I'll zone into this shortly. Anytime if you have any questions, please let me know. So this is the general IID service territory in yellow. As you can see, a small portion is in Palm Desert. Also, a small amount is in Ranch Mirage and across the freeway, largely county area.
Could you just stop there? So the CSU campus itself is in
It's in both.
both.
Yes, so there's essentially there's a dividing line there. I had an aerial, I can show you the pathway, but
I see
on
it.
the left side is Edison, on the right side was IID.
Okay.
Sounds like fun.
So two things we did is this conversation has really evolved over the last 18 months. And we engaged NV5, our technical consultant, to work alongside IID to understand their requirements, but at the same time to forecast the energy demand at build out for zones 1 and 2. So we took the development plans, also heard from the owners there on what they're intending to do with their property. Largely, we have commercial and hospitality, as well as the Cal State, which would be public use. So our consultant worked with the land use plans there to factor out what's the entire energy need for both zone 1 and zone 2. We have here for zone 1, it's 10 megawatts. Zone 2 is 5 megawatts. Zone 1 is represented by one property owner. Zone 2 has a collection of smaller property owners. So why this conversation evolved was at the beginning of the conversation, IID was indicating to us that a substation would be needed for zone 1 on its own, as well as zone 2 would need its own separate substation. Substations cost a minimum of $25 million. At that point, it's cost prohibitive to be able to build anything if you're having to fund $25 million worth of substation cost. So in that same time, we were having those conversations. The neighboring jurisdictions were also having those discussions, which is if you want power to your site, you have to build 1, 2, 3, or 4 substations. The conversation has moved to everybody who has been struggling with the same question, which is how do they get power to their sites? And working with IID and the collection of entities, one solution that they came up with is proposing the creation of one, I'll say, mega substation to support all the different parties in this area. The location would be alongside Cook Street, just across the freeway from the city's boundary. So why this made sense for IID was that it allowed them, this next is their grid layout, versus each entity building a substation by their property and them not really integrating well with their overall load. The location in green here would be that new proposed substation site. It's put in a site where there's currently transmission line that they can run from their existing infrastructure to support this, as well as they can feed development across the freeway. They're able to feed us south of the freeway, Rancho Mirage to the west, as well as to the variety of county projects that are either planned or under construction, that are planned.
Could you describe again the site of the substation?
So this would be essentially, if you're on Cook Street, right across the freeway, I believe it's Avenue 38.
Is there a possibility to either hover with the mouse or enlarge? Like I said, we've got folks that are watching it on YouTube or Zoom, and we want to be sure that they get a clear view.
The area that my cursor is over is the substation site. You'll see it's along Cook Street, and it would be, I would say, just northwest of the Aquashore Arena. And then that road there is Ramon Road.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So with this proposal, essentially, you have a variety of parties who have been at the table, and their energy demands are here listed as well. And essentially, it's versus one party building its own substation. It's, you know, do the collection of these organizations want to share in the cost of building this mega substation? The item here, blocked out in red, is Palm Desert's respective demand, as well as the costs associated to support that demand, which is just about $5 million. Now, within this amount.
I have one question.
Sure.
While we're there. So in terms of future build out, there isn't anything, we don't have any future home developments that would fit into this area?
In this area, it's all vacant parcels right now. And the property owners would be looking at some type of commercial or hospitality use.
Okay, so it wouldn't be a home builder coming in because couldn't whoever builds there pitch in for some of the future development? Or is it something the city of Palm Desert wants to purchase extra in terms of future development?
So the 15 megawatts is pretty conservative. So it factors in potential excess demand or needs. The idea with this would be if we participated in it, then the city essentially is guaranteed that 15 megawatts that it would then share with future development in that area.
So we would put into place clawback agreements based on the amount of power that they're using as a whole. And each property owner would be, we would put a formula to their property in terms of what they would have to pitch in to reimburse the city. It's unlikely that the city would be 100% reimbursed because some of this is city property. However, there would be, those clawbacks would be, we would collect that money at the time of building permit to try to offset this.
Yeah, so to fund that 5 million, the total cost of this substation is 27.3 million. The city's amount is 5 million. And so what we would do is issue bonds for this area, either through a business assessment district or CFD, to raise the capital to provide the city's contribution. And to Todd's point, each owner would be paying their respective share of their energy demand. We also forecasted with our consultant at build out, what's the revenue generated through property tax, sales tax, and TOT. We're looking at a range of anywhere between 1.3 million and 2 million in general fund revenue that would be sent to the general fund at build out. So with this item today, essentially the path forward is today we're seeking your initial guidance. IID has put together a schedule of the different items that they're looking to secure in order to make this happen. Should all the parties agree, we would return to the council in August. Hearing you today, we'd want to re-engage the property owners. And then September as IID's timeframe to have an agreement finalized. And they have indicated that from the date of execution of that agreement, they could be in service anywhere from 24 to 30 months from that time period. So our questions today here are essentially, open to any questions or feedback you have. And then is there interest in pursuing this multi-party arrangement and going through the bond financing?
Do we anticipate that we're operating in the positive thinking land of we will get the train, passenger rail station here on Cook? Will that be sufficient to give the power to the station as well as the surrounding merchants?
Yes, we factored it into our long-term plans.
Thank you. Any other questions? Oh, yes, please.
Comment and a question. My answers are yes, 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 yes. And huge commendations to staff for working on this. In my estimation, it's government at its best. Not just being reactive after there's a crisis, but anticipating the need, working collaboratively with private and public interest to solve a problem in a financially responsible way. So kudos all around. I have this one question / suggestion. There's a comment in the paperwork that because the CSU campus cannot participate financially in the substation, staff is working to negotiate other benefits such as shared use of sports fields and property for flood infrastructure. There's another benefit I'd like to see in the conversation. It could be hugely beneficial that part of the CSU campus is supplied by IID and part by Edison, because we're experiencing frailties in Edison's infrastructure that could create a health emergency in a heat wave if supply is absent to some huge swath of the city. So I think it would be prudent to be in conversations with CSU about the availability of space there for emergency provision of a cooling center. If there's an instance where the need exceeds the space of other suitable locations, does that make sense?
Absolutely, we could include that.
Wonderful. Yes, please.
Okay. I was at an IID meeting a few days ago and they were talking about doing 2 substations in East County, but then they mentioned one more in Thousand Palms area. Is this the substation?
This is one of 2 that would
Okay.
be servicing that area.
Okay, so it's one of 2. And they were saying the timeline was at least 3 years for build out?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Well, thank you. One question. Have you been in contact with the owners of those parcels and gotten any feedback from them in terms of their support or what the cost would be? Because my impression is that in the past, they were told, if you want it, you build it. So has this been a conversation with an update?
Yes, we've had a couple meetings with the property owners. I think the first one, when we were talking about the 25 million per zone, we knew it was going to be received well, and it wasn't. We did reapproach them now with this lower cost, and so there was generally more support for this. The next steps are we're planning to meet with each parcel owner to show them their respective amount. They would be able to pay that over 30 years or one time. So it will vary for each one. They'll have an option, but we're planning to continue discussions, and we know with this and the sub agreements that would be required, we'd be working with them in lockstep until they build out.
Thank you. This is great to hear. We know that we've had a lot of snags in our progress as we want to grow our future Palm Desert as a result of inadequate infrastructure. So I'm very pleased to see this moving along. As mentioned by Councilmember Kelly, this is a big one as we want to be able to address our cooling center having adequate situations and our students. So I think that we've gotten a great amount of information to see what you've done. So thank you for your report. Anything else?
No further study sessions today.
Perfect. It is now 3:22. Let's make it an even 3:30. See you guys back in 8 minutes.